Hey guys, hopefully everyone is doing well. Today's target is to solve question number 13.10. We have already solved 9 questions related to this concept. The chapter which we are related with is leverage and capital structure, managerial finance, your book, and writer is Lawrence Gitman. 13.10, as you know that we are related with a single concept break-even analysis with which we have already familiar with, and secondly we will be calculating degree of operating leverage. The special concept which we have introduced is our contribution margin format income statement with which we can calculate our EBIT. This is your question. Look over here. Just two lines are present in this question and remaining all are requirement. It looks like it's a very short question, but no, we'll have to solve each and every part separately, and each part has different inputs present in each section, so we will be solving them one by one. First requirement is compute operating break-even point. For that we will start our reading from the question. Degree of operating leverage is basic requirement in the question, and graphical view is also included in it. So first time we will draw the graph for degree of operating leverage as well. Levin Corporation has fixed operating cost 72,000. So just put it down, fixed cost, and that is $72,000. It is total fixed cost, that is why per unit has not been mentioned. Then we have variable operating cost mentioned over here, but let me handle it so that we don't go again and again for it. Okay, now read it. Variable operating cost is 6.75. Just note it down. We have variable cost. Now keep it in mind. This is 6.75 per unit. So variable cost per unit is mentioned over here, and that is 6.75. Okay. The next input given in the question is selling price 9.75. Again, please note it down. Selling price is per unit given over here. It's RS, and that is 9.75. So single amount given in the question is fixed cost, that is total, but sale price and variable cost both are given per unit 6.75 and 9.75. Now we are open to calculate our first part, which is what? Break even in terms of unit is required. Calculate operating break even in terms of units. The formula which would be used is fixed cost, and we need to divide it CM per unit. Over here fixed cost is already present in question, but we need to calculate contribution margin per unit. And how do we calculate contribution margin per unit? Basically it's a difference between variable cost and sale price. Since per unit is required, so you will write sale per unit and you will subtract your variable cost again per unit, with which you can calculate your contribution margin per unit. Kindly keep it in your mind. Sale price per unit is given over here 9.75, and we need to subtract variable cost per unit, and variable cost per unit is 6.75. Alright guys, so 6.75 statement is completed. Now we are open to put it on our calculator. So we have got our contribution margin per unit, which is 3. So come to the formula. We need to calculate break even in terms of unit. Fixed cost is needed to be divided by CM per unit. Fixed cost is given in question 72,000, and we need to divide it with CM per unit, which has been calculated over here 3. Statement is completed. Now we can put it on our calculator and we have got our first answer, that is break even in terms of unit. So this was our A point. Answer is 24,000, but we have calculated is also 24,000. It means it has been completed. Let's mark it as it has been done. First answer completed. Now we will see what B is required. What is required in B point? Compute degree of operating leverage using the following unit sale level 25, 30 and 40,000. These are units and we actually need to calculate degree of operating leverage. Before this calculation, why not just to write the formula for degree of operating leverage. What we are going to do, we need to divide contribution margin by net margin. In this way we can calculate. So CM would be divided by NM, formula for degree of operating leverage. Now how would we do that? Obviously we will be making contribution margin format income statement for each number of unit, and then we will calculate degree of operating leverage for all of this. So for calculation of contribution margin and net margin, we need to construct contribution margin income statement. How we do that? First we will be putting units over here, then per unit, and finally we will put amount. And how would we calculate this amount? Units would be multiplied with per unit, with which we will be able to calculate the amount. Contribution margin income statement start with sales and we will subtract variable cost, with which we will get contribution margin, after which we will subtract fixed cost, with which we will get net margin or EBIT, earning before interest and tax. And since we have done it for so many times, that is why I have taken a little speed. Now go back to the question. Degree of operating leverage is required to calculate for 25,000 number of units. So you may name it B1, as there are three different types of number of units. Sold unit 25,000, and this was required in our question. Look over here, 25,000. It is given in your question. Remaining everything is present. As you know that number of unit for sale will always be equal to number of unit of variable cost and number of units of contribution margin. You know it very well that number of units would be equal. Why? You cannot sell number of unit more than that of you have manufactured. Obviously, number of units you will manufacture and maximum same number of unit can be sold out. So here we have decided that number of unit for contribution margin, number of unit for variable cost, and number of unit for sale would always be equal. That is why 25, 25, 25 we have written. So per unit sale price we have already mentioned over here, 9.75. It was written from question. 9.75 your sale price, and variable cost is also mentioned over here, 6.75. So put it down 6.75. Now we can calculate contribution margin per unit. How? Because contribution margin is difference between variable cost and sale price. Per unit sale is also given, variable cost is given, so we can calculate our contribution margin by taking the difference. To calculate the difference, we will write per unit sale price 9.75 and we'll subtract per unit variable cost, which is 6.75. So we have got our contribution margin per unit. It's time to calculate the amounts. We have already mentioned that amount of each element would be calculated by multiplying units and per unit. Unit over here 25,000 and it would be multiplied with 9.75. We have got our sales. Now we will calculate total amount of variable cost Again, units would be multiplied with per unit. Units are 25,000 and it would be multiplied by per unit variable cost 6.75. We have got variable cost. Now contribution margin. There are two methods. You can calculate by multiplying units and per unit. Units over here 25,000 and multiply per unit contribution margin written over here 3. So this is first method to calculate contribution margin. Second way is just to subtract your variable cost from sales. Amount of sale is mentioned over here 243,750 and you will subtract variable cost 168,750. Okay, so in both ways you have calculated same contribution margin. It also a sort of confirmation that contribution margin has been calculated accurately. Both of them are not necessary, only one method is enough. This is what just to show it out that there are two options to calculate contribution margin. Now it is unnecessary to be written over here, you may erase it. Next, we need to put fixed cost, which is already mentioned over here, 72,000. Let's put it down. 72,000, which is our fixed cost. After which, we are now need to calculate our net margin, which is actually the difference between fixed cost and contribution margin. Your contribution margin is 75,000. To calculate the difference, you will subtract fixed cost, which is 72,000. In this way, we have calculated our net margin as well. So come over here, you need to calculate your degree of operating leverage, for which what you will apply a simple formula. Degree of operating leverage would be calculated how? Contribution margin would be divided by net margin. This is your contribution margin 75,000 and you need to divide it with net margin, that is 3,000. In this way, statement has been completed for degree of operating leverage. Now you can put it on your calculator and what you have got is 25 as your degree of operating leverage. Come over here. This was your B point and first answer is 25. And what you have calculated is also degree of operating leverage 25. This was for 25,000 number of unit and we need to calculate same for 30,000 as well. For that we will save our time and on Excel there is little ease. What I will do, I will use the same headings present over here for calculation of B second part. Here we will be doing B2. Over here headings would be same but amounts would be differentiated, as in second part we will be calculating earning before interest on tax for 30,000 number of unit. So first we will put 30,000 units for sales, and as it was earlier described, units sold would be equal to unit of variable cost and also it would be equal to units of contribution margin. It's impossible to sell some different number of unit, cost of some different number of unit and contribution margin of some different number of unit. It's not according to a simple common sense. Units would always be equal. One logic we have already used and second logic we have seen that units would always be same. It's impossible to get profit while cost was calculated for different unit and revenue was calculated for different unit. It is impossible. Now we will write per unit price of sale, which was already mentioned over here. Per unit sale price was 9.75. Come over here and put 9.75 as per unit sale price, and per unit variable cost, it is mentioned over here as well, 6.75, and variable operating cost 6.75 was mentioned over there as well. So 6.75 your variable cost. Now we can calculate contribution margin per unit, which is actually the difference between variable cost and sales. To calculate difference, we will put 9.75 as sale. Difference would be calculated by subtracting, so minus 6.75, which is variable cost. So difference between variable cost and sales is contribution margin, and we have calculated it. It is per unit, CM. Now it's time to calculate our amounts by multiplying units and per unit. Units over here 30,000, and we need to multiply per unit 9.75. Total amount of sale has been calculated. Next step is to calculate variable cost by multiplying units and per unit. 30,000 are units and 6.75 is your variable cost. In this way we have calculated total variable cost. Now contribution margin would be calculated similarly. Units would be multiplied with per unit. Units here are 30,000 and per unit contribution margin is 3. In this way we have calculated our contribution margin. Now we need to put our fixed cost, which is 72,000. So come over here and put 72,000 over here, after which we are now open to calculate our net margin, which is difference between fixed cost and contribution margin. To calculate the difference, we will write contribution margin 90,000 and difference would be calculated by subtracting fixed cost 72,000. In this way our net margin is also calculated. Over here we will calculate degree of operating leverage, and as we know that degree of operating leverage would be calculated by dividing contribution margin to its net margin. Over here this amount 90,000 is your contribution margin, and you need to divide it with net margin, and that is 18,000. Statement is completed. Now we can calculate it. 90,000 divided by 18,000. So we have second degree of operating leverage which has been calculated, and that is 5. So go back to the question, and here you have calculated second degree of operating leverage 5. In this way B1 part was calculated and degree of operating leverage was calculated over here. Okay, where it had gone, please excuse me for a while, and my question has been vanished. Let's see where it is. Okay, 1 second. That was here. Okay, here you have calculated contribution margin. Let's mark it as it has been done. 25 was your first answer, and then for B part you have also calculated degree of operating leverage, which was 5, and same we will be doing for B third part. As in B there are 3 different stages mentioned. Now we will calculate degree of operating leverage for 40,000 units, for which what we will do, we will hire these headings again and will use to calculate contribution margin for next number of unit, and that is 40,000. As usual, number of units sold would be equal to number of unit of variable cost and number of unit of contribution margin, because an income statement will not have different number of unit for sale and variable cost. It would always be same. Sale price I do have in my mind 9.75. So put 9.75 as your sale price. Now variable cost is also mentioned over here, 6.75. After which we can calculate our contribution margin. Look, it was very easy to copy paste everything. So instead of this, I'm just writing the numerical portion so that you can repeat it for so many times. It would be easier for you to memorize it. Contribution margin is actually the difference between variable cost and sales. To calculate the difference, we will put sales 9.75. Difference would be calculated by subtracting. Variable cost is 6.75. So we have got our contribution margin per unit. Now we will calculate total amounts. Amount of sale would be calculated by multiplying units into per unit. Units over here are 40,000. and it would be multiplied per unit sale price 9.75. Total amount sale has been calculated. It's time to calculate total amount of variable cost, for which we will multiply units 40,000 and multiply it with per unit variable cost 6.75. Now we can calculate our contribution method. First method is to multiply units and per unit. Units 40,000 and you need to multiply per unit contribution margin 3. In this way you have calculated your contribution margin. Second way, we can calculate contribution margin by taking the difference of sales and variable costs. Total amount of sale 3,90,000 present over here. To calculate the difference, we will subtract variable cost in total 270,000. Same amount you can see we have calculated. So it means you can calculate by taking difference of sale and variable cost, and you can calculate contribution margin by multiplying units of contribution margin by per unit CM. Both options are correct. So we have already calculated 1,20,000. Second option is was just to let you understand. Now it is unnecessary to be written over here. Variable cost, sorry, fixed cost 72,000. Let's put it down 72,000 over here. Now we are open to calculate our net margin, which is actually the difference between fixed cost and contribution margin. To calculate the difference, first we will write contribution margin 1,20,000 and then we will subtract fixed cost, which was 72,000. In this way our net margin would be calculated as 48,000. Over here, now we are required to calculate our degree of operating leverage, which is actually the difference, actually be calculated by contribution margin and net margin. By dividing contribution margin to its net margin, we will be able to calculate degree of operating leverage. This is third degree of operating leverage. Contribution margin over here is 1,20,000 and we are going to divide it with net margin, that is 48,000. So statement has been completed. Now we can put it on our calculator. So we have got our answer 2.5. Let's go back to the question and see third answer. And here B part was solved. Third answer is 2.5 and our calculated answer is also 2.5. In this way, degree of operating leverage for all three levels have been calculated: 2.5, 5, and then we have calculated 25. So same has been present over here: 2.5, 5 and 25. Let's see what C part is saying. Graph the DOL figures what we have computed in part B on y-axis against base sale levels on x-axis. So we are now going to solve our C part, where we are required to make a graph, and we will be making this graph over here. Let's fix x-axis and y-axis. Over here, this is your x-axis, and we will also put our y-axis over here. Look over here, this is your x-axis and this is your y-axis. Over here you will be putting your amounts of units over here. Here you will put units, and over here we have a problem. We want to make it in two parts. Little problem. Okay, we will solve it later on. Now what we are going to do, we are making graph for units and degree of operating leverage. For that purpose, first we will compute our data. Here you will put your number of units and then you will be writing your degree of operating leverage. Little more space is needed, or instead of space, why not we should wrap it up. Okay, number of units given in the question were 25,000 and then 30,000 and then 40,000. So these were three number of units Let's see it again. Okay, 25, 30 and 40. So we have written correctly 25, 30 and 40. Degree of operating leverage for 25,000 was 25. Put over here 25. Degree of operating leverage for 30,000 units. These were 30,000. Degree of operating leverage 5. Put 5. And next step to see degree of operating leverage for 40,000, 2.5. In this way, our data has been completed. We will put units over here. Actually, there is a problem. We should have different points over here. So instead of that, we are going to put points by self. And look, to make graph on Excel, it has a little trick. So right now we are going to point over here. Okay. Second point would be present over here. Third point you will mark over here. And since number of unit 25, 30, 40, let's make another part. Okay, just settle it down little more proper way. So in this way, what you will do, equal sized partition would be made. Equal sized. We need to present number of unit from 25,000 to 40,000. So here you can write 10k first, 10,000. This point would be used for first point for 10,000 and second point would be used for 20,000. Okay, we'll have to align them according to our requirement. And next point is 30,000. Again, it is also needed to be aligned. So 30,000 would be written over here. And then we have last point that is presenting 40,000. Its alignment is also needed. So in this way, our x-axis is ready. Let's put line over here as well. It is requested to you kindly consider that these amounts are written under these points. In Excel, it is little tricky. So I have written 30,000 for this point, 40,000 for this point, and when you will be drawing this graph on your copy, you will write exactly under this point 20,000. So units are presenting over here, and at this stage, you will write your degree of operating leverage. Least point is 22.5 and maximum is 25. We need 10 lines then. 1, 2, okay, it would be completed. So 2.5, first we should align it. Let's make it to the right side. As you can see that for graphs we'll have to be very careful. Here 2.5 and then next would be 5, 7.5, 10. Difference of 2.5 would be taken 12.5, 15, 17.5, 20, 22.5 and 25. So in this way all figures are now presenting. Problem has been sorted out. So graph is now getting ready. For units 25,000, we have 25 as degree of operating leverage. Units 25,000. 25,000 would be in between 20 and 30. This is, and secondly, leverage is 25. So this would be our first point, 25. So what we will do, we will make 3 points. First point would be in front of 25,000. Look over here. 25 is over here. This is straight line and 25 is here. So first point we have managed. And now second point is 30,000 and 5. 30,000 is here and 5 would be over here. So just pick second point. Upon your copy, you will be making these points exactly like what we are doing right now. So this is your second point. Now we need to change its color so that we can distinguish, changing its color as well. And third point would also be changed, and this blue color is not needed. For third point, what we need is 40,000 and 2.5. 40,000 here and 2.5 would be just like over here. 2.5. This was 5. Okay, let's make the third arrangement, and that is combination of 25 and 2.5. Combination of 40 and 2.5. 40 was here and 2.5 over here. In this way we have got our 3 points. So understand again. First point was 25,000 and 25. 25,000 units are present over here in between 20 and 30. Straight line up, and then you have to see what second element is 25. Straight up line and 25 is here. When they are matching at a place where both lines are intersecting each other, that would be your first point. In second, 30,005, 30,000 up till you have got your number 5. This way your second point and third point is mentioned over here. Now it's time to match all these 3 points, for which a straight line is needed, and we will take it from here. So first line, that would be from first point to this point. This is your first line, and now we need to have another line, and that would be from B point to your C point. So guys, this way you have completed your graph for C part, and this would be just like this. A little more adjustment is needed. So graph has been completed, and you will be constructing this graph exactly what I have done over here, but more precisely what you will do, you will write these 20,000 units exactly under this blue point, 10,000 exactly under this blue point, and 30,000 exactly under this blue point. So in this way your graph has been completed. Let's go back to the question and see what else. Graph the DOL figures that you have computed, we have made against base sales levels. This has been calculated. D point is saying compute the degree of operating leverage of 24,000 units at this point to, and add this point to your graph as well. So let's start our D point, with which, under which what we will calculate degree of operating leverage for 24,000 units. Okay, so for that we will follow the same procedure which we have calculated over here. For degree of operating leverage 24,000 units, we are taking headings from previous parts. Over here we will just change our number of unit with which every amount would be different. In our question, we are asked to compute degree of operating leverage for 24,000 units. So here units sold 24,000, and as usual unit for variable cost would also be 24,000. Unit for contribution margin would be 24,000 as well. And then we need to put per unit sale price, and this was mentioned over here, per unit sale price 9.75. Let's put it down over here, 9.75. Then we need to put variable cost, which is 6.75. So we need to put 6.75 as our variable cost. Now we need to calculate contribution margin, which is difference between variable cost and sales. To calculate the difference, we will put sales 9.75. Difference would be calculated by subtracting variable cost 6.75. This way we have calculated our contribution margin 3. Come over here. Now total amounts are needed to be calculated by multiplying units and per unit. Units are 24,000. Per unit sale price is 9.75. We have got our total sale price. Now we will be calculating total variable cost 24,000. It would be multiplied with 6.75 per unit variable cost. We have got total variable cost and total amount of sales. Now we are open to calculate contribution margin. First method is to multiply units and per unit. Units of contribution margin 24,000, per unit contribution margin 3. So we have got our contribution margin 72,000. Get up and see fixed cost is 72,000. Put over here 72,000 as your fixed cost. And obviously when you will subtract contribution margin and fixed cost would be subtracted from contribution margin, you will get 0. Both amounts are same. Over here we were asked to calculate degree of operating leverage. We have already written the formula, and this same formula would be used to calculate degree of operating leverage for this part. Degree of operating leverage would be calculated by dividing contribution margin to net margin. It has been written over here. So your contribution margin over here is 72,000, and it would be divided by 0. Obviously what will happen, 72,000 when it would be divided by 0, you will get nothing. This sign is showing infinity. Go back to the question and you can see third answer is infinity, because you are at break-even level. Degree of operating leverage is nil. So you can say degree of operating leverage is infinity over here. When you get answer 0, it would be considered infinity. D part has been solved, but in D part another discussion was made. Add this point to your graph. Okay, so where we have made graph over here, and next point we are going to put is 24,000 were your units and your degree of operating leverage was infinity or 0. So come over here, add 24,000. This 24,000 would be over here, just left side of the center of 20 and 30, and 0 would be the value. So you can choose this. We need to put a point and add 24,000 would be here, and since it is equal to 0, so graph would not be possible to make. Otherwise, if you want to make a graph, you can make it like this. Take it over here, and second line would be present over here. So in this way you can complete your graph. Otherwise, since we were having 24,000, at 24,000 we were having degree of operating leverage as 0, so it was not possible to mention it. So we have already made the graph at this stage. If you want to make this graph like this, so you can write it like what we have done. Otherwise, it's not possible to write over here at 24,000. You may write or you may not write. Just for presentation, you will write just this red point to present it. Okay. So let's go back to the question and see what else is said in the D part. We have already made the graph. In D part, we have already calculated the operating leverage for 24,000 and we have added this point to the graph as well. Please note it down. We have added this red point presenting 24,000 and 0. So we have added this point on our graph. E part, what principle do your graph and figure illustrate? Okay, this is simple thing. You can see that there is a negative sense of graph over here. Negative relationship of the graph, which is presenting if you will increase your number of unit, your degree of operating leverage would be decreased. So as you will increase your number of units, your degree of operating leverage is decreasing. You can see over here 25 to 30, 30 to 40, when you have increased your number of units, your degree of operating leverage has been decreased. So at E point, principle which we have elaborated over here is there there is indirect or negative relation between units sold and degree of operating leverage. So principle has been described that there is indirect relationship between number of units sold and degree of operating leverage. There is indirect or negative relation between units sold and degree of operating leverage. Why it is not looking? Let's make it again. Okay, the rule was meant to be prominent over here. Now it is okay. So this was your principle which you have described, the relationship between units sold and degree of operating leverage. It is indirect. In other way, you can say if units sold would be increased, degree of operating leverage would be decreased. So this is your relationship. If units sold would be increased, degree of operating leverage would be decreased. So, or you can say due to increase in number of units sold, degree of operating leverage would be, if number of due to increase, degree of operating leverage would be decreased, as there is inverse relationship. Due to increase in number of units sold, degree of operating leverage would be decreased, and this is not prominent. Let's make it prominent. So this is our principle in different way. First, there is an indirect relationship, or due to increase in number of units sold, degree of operating leverage would be decreased. This is principle which has been taken from our graph and from the data which we have collected over here. You can see units are increasing, degree of operating leverage is decreasing. In this way, We have completed, I think, all the parts. Yes, all the parts have been completed. It's time to view it. A part was having 24,000 answer, A 24,000, and then B part was having 3 answer, 25, 5, 2.5. Here you have your B part. First answer 25 degree of operating leverage, then second answer 5, 2.5 was the third answer. 3 answers are completed, and then we have our C part where we were required to make a graph. This is your graph, and the data which was used to make the graph is present over here. This way your C part was completed. Then degree of operating leverage for 24,000 D point. This was D point. Degree of operating leverage was infinity as we were on break-even point. D part was solved, and then E part was theory to create the principal. Now keep it in mind, there is inverse relationship, indirect, negative, or you can also call it inverse relationship between units sold and degree of operating leverage. It means one aspect would be decrease, other aspect would be increase. Relationship between units sold and degree of operating leverage. Unit increase, degree of operating leverage decrease. Unit sold decrease, operating leverage would be increased. Inverse relationship, indirect relationships. So all parts have been solved, question has been reviewed, all answers are matched, and review has been completed. 13.10 is completed. Solution is in front of you, each and every part, answers are present, which are reviewed as well. But even then you are very open to ask your questions, queries, or any part of the question you want to understand. Even once again, you are very open to put your queries through messages, text, or you can directly meet to ask your queries. I will surely be available to answer your questions instantly. 13.10 is completed. Hopefully we will be meeting soon again for the solution of any other question. Up till then, please take care of yourself, and I'm requesting you to please pray for me as well. And as usual, one request to please repeat this question for 3 to 4 times to make it better understood. 13.10 is ended. Our session has been ended. It's time to say goodbye. Thank you very much for your time. Allah Hafiz.